I'm not a musical artist like Google says for some reason, but as you guys know, I'm a public intellectual who runs a YouTube channel for a living. I'd like to think that I'm a bit more aware than your average NPC. However, that's not the only thing I do in my life. I have started multiple social groups with other highly intelligent and successful young people like myself to talk about various different things and to socialize. One time we were talking about the book The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, and that got us talking about food and our favorite foods. The same thing can't be said for the third world today. Because of deglobalization, the decoupling of the global economy, the US pulling out of large parts of the globe, and regional conflicts like the Ukraine-Russia war blocking food supplies and inputs, this puts the states in these regions under immense stress. Without reliable access to food supply, this creates in many places intense Malthusian pressures on the population. This is a recipe for disaster and will cause horrible famines that will kill millions of people across the globe over the coming decades. Pray to God that another green revolution can occur before it is too late. The Western world will have it less bad, but it will not escape the coming crisis. Plummeting birth rates in Western countries will cause a demographic crisis not seen since the French Revolution, but only in the opposite direction, with there being too few people. This will cause a collapse in the European social democracies, as the welfare state will stop working, and who knows what comes next. The US has it better, however, remaining a stable quarter of the global economy, while also having better birth rates and more immigration. The US does have severe political divides, but it has the core fundamentals to deal with many of the problems that Europe faces. The United States will rebound and be stronger than ever once they are no longer reliant on globalization and manufacturing jobs come back to support the middle class. Currently, though, the US is dealing with many major problems that the current political establishment has been incapable of solving. Stagnating purchasing power, increasing cost of living, college loans, homelessness, political polarization and radicalization, leftist ideology infiltrating all institutions of power, falling birth rates, decreasing trust in the government and military, a bad educational system, a massive increase in loneliness and the loss of social cohesion, the YouTube algorithm wrecking my videos, the problems go on and on. One of the major problems in the West is leftist ideologies taking over the college system. Because of the increasing complexity of the modern economy, many jobs require a college degree to even have a chance of getting hired. However, leftists at colleges, who are the professors and administrators, are able to teach their ideology to their impressionable students, who have never had enough actual life experience to be able to debunk their claims. These colleges now also act as propaganda centers to spread their false religion. An example of this is gender ideology. They argue that gender and sex are social or cultural constructions. However, this argument debunks itself, because why should people listen to people who disagree with them and allow them to change our society when it has no basis in scientific fact? Using their logic, anyone can choose to reject their cultural understanding of gender and support their own cultural understanding of gender. You know, like the normal understanding of gender, where men are male and women are female. It is rich coming from universities that pride themselves on following the scientific method who somehow just ignore this reality in regard to gender and sex when it becomes politically convenient to them. The origins of leftist ideology itself is from piling false assumptions on false assumptions separated from the reality of the world, which will result in the obvious. The main source of leftist ideology comes from Karl Marx, but Marx was heavily inspired by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who is, to put it bluntly, a degenerate. Don't take my word for it though, just hear the words of his contemporary Scottish Enlightenment philosopher, David Hume, who described Rousseau as the blackest and most atrocious villain beyond comparison that now exists in this world. I mean, just look at the facts. Communism, a leftist ideology, has killed more people than any other ideology, including religions. Worth noting though, capitalism has also taken many lives, however. Countless leftists, socialists, and communists have died from copium after coming to the horrible realization that socialism or communism never works. Socialism has been such a curse upon humanity, you can literally make a whole category of socialist leaders that can be classified as part of the great mass murderers of human history. I have dealt with many socialists and leftists in real life and online, and I must say, they are some of the most insufferable and intellectually dishonest people I have ever dealt with. They are relentless with ad hominem attacks, diverting the subject from the original topic, shaming and trying to cancel you, and calling you transphobic when you say to them you don't agree with gender ideology. Did I mention I don't like redheads? They don't even acknowledge another major problem in the West today, which is the issue of loneliness, more specifically male loneliness. It's a huge problem that doesn't get talked about enough, because if you do say something, you'll be accused of taking away attention from women's issues. It's crazy that we can ignore one half of society's issues because we are terrified of facing repercussions from a gynocentric government and society. The main cause of this rise in loneliness is social media, or more aptly, anti-social media. Because of this, single women can use dating apps to find a top 10% guy easily. However, this isn't necessarily good for the women either, as these top-tier guys might be attractive and successful, but might have mental illnesses or just be terrible people, and many of these encounters lead to one-night stands that are unfulfilling for all involved, leading to everyone being depressed just for different reasons. A recent attitude occurring that has been insane to me is the Sigma male phenomenon. What started as a meme has started to be taken seriously as an actual lifestyle. People like the Tate brothers and others have been teaching precepts and life advice to many men, especially boys, which seem very similar to what the so-called Sigma male is supposed to do. Which is horrible advice, because the Sigma male meme is just supposed to be a joke about a guy being horrible to the people around him, being presented as good and a social ideal. The thing is, you should not be surprised at this, because even though Andrew Tate might be a very flawed role model, who else is there? Where are the male role models? Can you name any? Is it any surprise that when someone advocates for solely male empowerment in a guy's life, that guys will listen to him? Now, my friend sent me some absolutely hilarious memes, which are from anime. Anime is one of the largest forms of entertainment for Gen Z, and for some of the most popular shows, the main characters are the Sigma male archetype. The main character shows little regard for his own and for others' lives. He manipulates and terrorizes people into getting what he wants, usually for selfish desires for power or revenge. He always goes on a massive power trip and has an absolutely colossal ego. And he treats women like shit, or treats them like Pokemon on how many he can sleep with. And if you don't think people do that, you don't know Pokemon fans. When one of the most well-known characters in anime at the moment is Eren Yeager, I mean, I just have to say, viewing this as a reflection of society and Gen Z, come on, you don't even have to watch anime to know what this guy is like. And all of the stuff I've been talking about so far is just cultural, not geopolitical or on a global basis. I mean, with how bad the divisions in the USA are, in Europe they're even worse. This is my ethnicity map of Europe, and I mean, how do you expect all of these different groups to get along? This isn't the 19th or 20th century. Europe's population has mostly peaked and will decline, becoming completely irrelevant and pathetic. They need to band together to stay a superpower and not just become America's tourist destination. They need to fix their social democratic governments, fix the migrant and immigration problem, and stop relying on the Americans for safety. This is my optimistic prediction of the world by 2100. I'll give an analysis of each region. I predict that America will rebound from its hard times in the 2020s and 30s and will experience a golden age later this century. As for Mexico, the government's authority will degrade further and become de facto disintegrated, only having real authority in and around Mexico City. The cartels will form their own regions of control and act more like regional warlords. The already Americanized northern Mexican states will ask to join the United States. As for Canada, decades of tyrannical leftist rule combined with immigration will make Canada cease to be a functioning state, and the western provinces and northern territories will join the USA, while Ontario, being too proud, will not join. Quebec will also break free. The Caribbean and Central America will come under American control because of hated, incompetent, or completely dysfunctional governments, allowing for the US to annex some of these countries to settle their problems once and for all. In Russia, it has been shown that the Russians are completely incompetent and their state has been hollowed out by corruption. I expect that when Putin dies, the Russian state will collapse into regional players seeking for control and influence, similar to Yugoslavia. Many of these states, mostly west of the Urals, will see close ties with the EU and NATO because of financial and military support and will be absorbed into these organizations over time. For Turkey, even though it is currently ruled by a moron, I'm still a big believer in it, mostly because everyone else in the region is even more incompetent. Once Russia collapses, all of the Central Asian states will align with Turkey and surround Iran, Turkey's main rival, on multiple fronts. Because of the unpopularity of the Iranian government, it will be overthrown and replaced with a more moderate government like Turkey's, and be incorporated into Turkey's sphere of influence. Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon are failed states which will be absorbed easily. Because of the resource curse, Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states will eventually collapse once the demand for oil stops or their supply dries up first. Jordan is too small to put up a serious resistance. Egypt is too busy trying to control its own population to actually win a war against another major power. Currently, Libya and Sudan don't even exist as states. Right now, they are literally just borders on a map. And as for Israel, let's not talk about Israel. In Europe, because of falling birth rates and an even larger migrant crisis because of climate change, the European countries will band together to form a united front to deal with these problems. There will be much more integration between countries, and maybe even a unified European state will be created. Greece will also be kicked out of the EU because they will default again, and they will be forced to join the Turkish Khaganate to get a bailout. And no, Serbia will not join the European Union because they will be on life support from copium for the next 200 years because they are never getting Kosovo back. In China, because of their collapsing birth rates, I expect the Chinese to be very aggressive in the years to come, especially so if the US withdraws from the global order to settle matters at home. Once Russia collapses, I believe China will absorb Siberia for its minerals and land and settle its ethnic Han Chinese population there. This will make China self-reliant for all of its needs and firmly become a land power, not needing to invade Taiwan. I also believe there will be some sort of political coup in China, which is really just a one-man show run by Xi Jinping. This is more feasible than it might sound, as Xi lives in an information bubble surrounded by lackeys who are terrified of saying anything negative. Therefore, he is not being adequately informed and has no real clue what goes on outside of his view. He, or maybe the entire Communist Party, will be replaced with something at least moderately more competent. For India, although they won't gain much territory, they will still be the most populous country on Earth and will be a military and economic superpower by 2100. Their economy, military, and population will all steadily grow until late this century. The Indian Navy will have the Indian Ocean under its control, and India will have multiple countries in their economic and military alliance, including Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Mozambique, and Madagascar. Concerning Pakistan, let's just say west of the Ravi is a no-go zone. In Southeast Asia, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam will become Chinese puppets because China has control over the source of the Mekong River and will use that as leverage over these countries. And they can do this because what's the US going to do about it? Fight a land war against the 10 million strong armies in the jungles of Southeast Asia? Myanmar will come under the Indian sphere of influence because every aspiring superpower needs to practice military intervention in another country. In Africa, half of the continent will fall into disorderly chaos because of extremely weak governments. However, two major powers will form, that is Ethiopia and the East African Federation. Ethiopia has a good track record of staying as a cohesive state and has a strong warrior spirit. With a growing population and industries, Ethiopia will become a developed economy with good demographics. The East African Federation will be similar, but instead of a historical unity as one country, the EAF has a common language, that of Swahili, and has natural, easily defensible borders. Both also border the Indian Ocean, and these countries will heavily economically integrate with India. A potential rivalry could develop between Ethiopia and the EAF, however, as both countries are of a similar size. And there's not much else interesting outside of that. What? Why has Indonesia collapsed? You want a source on that? Screw you. Though I may seem very negative at times about the world in my videos, I'm actually not. I've realized in life that no matter the case, everyone needs something to believe in that is beautiful and greater than themselves. Something that gives life purpose and the drive to keep moving forward. Then, no matter the situation, you can at least say that you didn't give up. That's the first step to leading a more fulfilling life.